with a monarch ruling over us. In our world today, kings and queens are very often figureheads. But in Jesus' time, the king was the one who wielded all the power. The king was the last word on everything. And more recently, we Americans, I know I have been drawn into the romantic story of an American actress who marries a dashing prince. But monarchy at its heart is not about romance. It is ultimately about power and authority, about privilege and politics. Last year, we also heard some stories in the news about a different monarchy. A story about a prince who ordered the murder of a journalist. And that is the other ugly side of royal power. In Jesus' day, people understood that a king was a very real person to whom they owed an obligation of support and allegiance. They understood themselves as living within a kingdom, which by definition would be ruled by and dominated by a king, or in the case of Rome, an emperor. And this truth shaped every aspect of their lives. They were subject to the king or the emperor's decrees. The king was the one with the ultimate power, and everyone was answerable to the king and his court and his government, and subject to his whims. Power and authority, those were the two essential qualities of a king. Now, kings could be benevolent, but kings could also be harsh, even cruel, and the people would have no say in that. Then Jesus came, preaching a message that the kingdom of God had drawn near. And as he described it, this was a radically different kind of kingdom. A kingdom of compassion, a kingdom of forgiving love, a kingdom where all things are shared in common, a kingdom of inclusion where even sinners and foreigners will be welcome. It's a kingdom that in fact has always existed, but which only now through Jesus' presence was beginning to be recognized. Jesus challenged the people and challenges us to consider the kingdom of God that is unlike all the kingdoms of this world, where power is equated with military might and influence and wealth. And so Jesus tells Pontius Pilate, "My kingdom is not of this world. It is in the world, but it is not of the world. It is the kingdom by which every other political system and authority will ultimately be judged." The kingdom of which Jesus speaks is hard to see, which may be why so many people miss it. And Jesus didn't have the trappings of a king, no palace, no army, just a small motley crew of disciples who followed him around. He had no riches, no throne, but he has a kingdom that is firmly established and secure, not subject to the shifts of history, but is unshakable and eternal in nature, and the place where all authority and power does truly reside. This is what we call the kingdom of God. Over the centuries, untold numbers of people have been sent out and even died for their kings. But Christ, the King of all creation, does things much differently in his kingdom. For ordinarily a king sends his army out to fight for the sake of the king's own interests. The King Jesus goes out alone to the cross to fight and win the victory over sin and death, not for his sake, but for our sake. The amazing truth of the cross is that Jesus refuses to use his power to save himself. For in order to save his people, he must choose to submit to the forces of sin and death in this world so that he can overcome them ultimately with the power of forgiveness and self-giving love. And so, in what at first appears to be the worst kind of humiliation and pain, his power and glory are revealed. The power of the cross is that as he suffers on it, King Jesus is willing, able, and determined to ask God to forgive those who have rejected and mocked him. Only the King has the authority to pardon those who have been condemned. There are no more powerful words than these. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. In Jesus Christ, the cross, which was an instrument of death and despair, becomes for us a symbol of hope. What does this mean for us? In the face of the worst that this world can bring, we always have hope, because our King Jesus is going to battle for us and with us so that such trials will be overcome. We gain insight into this when, after Pilate condemns Jesus to death, he is hung on the cross between two criminals. These two thieves crucified him reveal two responses that we also might have to Jesus. The first thief sees him as a pathetic figure. He thinks, as the world does, that a real king with real power would not even be in that position, would not allow such things to happen. But the second king sees a different reality. He recognizes in Jesus the truth of his transcendent power and authority, even hanging on the cross. He sees beyond to a greater reality. We too are invited by faith to look beyond, for things are not always as they seem. The lordship of Christ on the cross, the power and authority of Christ on the cross is a paradox. It's a paradox. What appears to be weakness is the ultimate show of strength. That is to say, it takes more power to voluntarily take on the suffering of the world and to forgive one's enemies, and then overcome sin, evil, and death, than it takes to lash out and obliterate all those who would oppose us. In the face of that kind of power, in Jesus' perfect suffering presence, the second thief can honestly acknowledge his own sin and failure and ask for pardon. And in Jesus, he receives it. Encountering Jesus for this second thief produces faith and belief and hope, enough to ask, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And with compassion, Jesus answers him, today you will be with me in paradise. We too behold the crucified Christ. we may also respond with skepticism or with humility and hope in Jesus' very presence. And we too pray, Jesus, remember me. And we hear him say to us, today you will be with me. Today I will be with you. Today all is forgiven. Today life begins again. For even as King Jesus reigns from the cross, he does not stay on the cross. In his death and in his resurrection from the tomb, Jesus comes to reign over all time, over all that is in our world, and over our lives. His kingdom is here and it is now. His kingdom is coming. And it is a kingdom of peace, forgiveness, justice, love, and new life. You remember that earlier in Luke's Gospel, Jesus says, "Do not fear, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." May our lives reflect this truth, that the power of our servant King can overcome any challenge that we may face. In his loving rule, our broken world may be and is being made whole. And we are subjects of this new creation. And we give thanks that this is our present and it is our future. In awe and wonder at such patience and love, we give our heartfelt thanks. Not only this Thanksgiving, but every day of the year. To God be the glory. Thanks be.